Orators Anonymous is a fellowship of individuals who, through shared experience, strength, and hope, are recovering from compulsive overeating. We welcome everyone who wants to stop eating compulsively. There are no dues or fees for members. We are self-supporting through our own contributions, neither soliciting nor accepting outside donations. OA is not affiliated with any public or private organization, political movement, ideology, or religious doctrine. We take no position on outside issues. Our primary purpose is to abstain from compulsive eating and compulsive food behaviors and to carry the message of recovery through the 12 steps of OA to those who still suffer. How our meeting works. At this meeting, we follow a rotating format. On the second week of the month is a recovered OA speaker who will be speaking on the topic of their choosing for 30 minutes. There will be a follow-up Q&A segment for 15 minutes where fellows are welcome to ask questions of our speaker, which are related to the topic in question. This meeting is being recorded by audio only. You will see a recorded sign at the top of your screen. The Q&A section of our meeting will also be recorded. Please post only in the chat function your question for our host, Jax, today, and she will ask your question on your behalf. You can do it, and please do not do this before the Q&A segment opens. Before we share, it is time for the seventh tradition. Although we are meeting electronically, we still have Zoom meeting costs to pay. We also give contributions to the OA UKEB, which is our virtual intergroup. Please make a contribution using the PayPal or bank details that will be entered in the chat now. Newcomers, we ask that you wait to contribute until you are sure you want to be here. Okay. Today is the speaker meeting. Yay! Second Wednesday of the month. Little thing here. Hold on. I am honored to have Charlotte here. Charlotte celebrates 2 years of continuing recovery this month and has kindly volunteered to share with us a little of her journey from being controlled by food through admitting that she has no power to control her food to the liberation that it brings. She will talk about how OA has saved her life and why service is such an essential element for her recovery. So I am very excited to invite our own Sharlotte G. I'm going to turn it over to you, my love. Anna, Charlotte, would you like to let Anna know? She's our timer. How you'd like time today?
If I can have a halfway mark and then 2 minutes before my time's up. So like 15 and then what's that, 28?
Yeah, no problem, Charlotte.
I've been in equal measures about excited for this, but also petrified. So yeah, my name's Sharlotte G, and I am, by the grace of God, a recovered compulsive overeater. It's like those words coming out of my mouth, that's like, I finished, not really because you never finish, but I finished work on the steps about, I don't know, 18 months ago. And like I say that virtually every meeting I'm at, it's like, it still sounds just weird coming out of my mouth, but I am a recovered compulsive overeater. And I hope to share a little bit today about what that journey has been like, where I came from, why the heck I'm here, but also what's kept me here and what's kept me going, even when I don't want to, even when I want to run away and binge my brains out. And there's a set of resources that I rely on heavily. And I'm going to share just a little bit about those resources in this next bit of time with you. So my journey, like most of us, starts in early childhood. I remember when I was very, very young, probably 3 or 4. And sorry, I feel like half of you probably heard half of what I'm going to say. I used to take a tub of beef dripping to bed. Now, it's probably the most disgusting thing in the world to eat. But it wasn't so much that I was going to eat it. It was that it was there. So my sister had a little teddy bear that was an elephant, and it was called Flump. And as long as she had Flump in bed with her, like everything would be okay. Nothing could harm her. The ghouls and the goblins and all of those things that we believe in as children couldn't get to her as long as Flump was there. And for me, this tub of beef dripping was very much my security, my comfort blanket, my Flump. And that lasted for quite some time. My mother would find it, she would take it, she'd put it back in the fridge, I'd take it the next day. Never seemed to stop. But then it got to the point where it being there just wasn't quite enough anymore. And I would start taking things to bed that I knew I was going to eat during the night, because I needed that comfort. I needed the release that brought. And this went on for quite some time, so much so that my mother became quite concerned and sent me to a food specialist, children's food specialist, to try and help me along a little bit, get me back on track, get me under the weight where I should be, or to the weight where I should be, rather. And all I remember when I was sitting there that day was thinking, this guy, like, his belly was hanging over his trousers, like, he obviously has a problem with food. Who the hell is he to lecture me? And so I went out and just continued to eat. And that would continue for quite some time, up until the point when I was starting on, what can I do for work? It's like, I have to make some sort of choice here. So I love food, so I decided to be a chef. Not just any old chef, though, a pastry chef. So all of the things that have quite a lot of the things that, as a compulsive overeater, and I think a lot of us have, high fat, high flour, high sugar. That was what I interacted with on a daily basis. And because pastry chef is very much a specialty, you generally, and also because you need a cold kitchen to do pastry, I would generally be in a kitchen on my own. So it's generally a side kitchen. And because of that, I could make things go to wastage. What that really meant was Charlotte ate it and put it down as wastage. And so I just continued to get bigger and get bigger and get bigger, up until the point where I was 27 stone, about 350 pounds from my American fork. And completely unrelated to my overeating, but I ended up in hospital with sepsis. And I was sitting there in the bed, and I'd been on drips and everything for nearly a week, and eventually pulled through that. And the doctor came round to me and he says, I'm just about to release you. You have to be very careful, because you'll be more susceptible to getting sepsis again now you've had it once. It's like, but that's not my concern for you right now. My concern for you right now is that if you don't get your weight under control, if you don't stop eating the way you're eating, you will be dead within the decade. And I was like, well, I don't care. It's like, I've got a family member who is an addict in a different program, and she does alcohol. My brother controls his life with drugs. Food's my thing. It doesn't really harm anybody but me. Yeah, I'm a little overweight, or a lot overweight. It's like, at least I'm enjoying my life. And I thought, how the heck can he like lecture me about my weight? Again, it was another doctor that was a little overweight. And so I went out and I bought 2 12-inch pizzas, because that was going to solve everything, because it always did, until the next day I was like, now I feel terrible. So I'm going to go and buy another set of pizzas, because that's going to fix it until the next day. You get the cycle. And so I went home, binged my brains out on these pizzas, and just continued on. Then on or around March the 14th, 2020, something broke inside of me. Can't tell you what. I just know that it did, and it's like, I have to stop eating like this. And through all of this time, I'd been my higher power had been preparing me for this program, mainly through me going to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm not an alcoholic, but as I said, my sister is, and she would quite often invite me along when she had major milestones, like her birthday is like the OA Christmas party, the AA Christmas party and stuff, and AA. They can't drink, but by geez, they know how to put a good spread on. And quite often I would go, because I knew there would be some really good snacks and treats there. And basically, while everybody was chatting, I would just be grazing. And that's what, like, that grazing was probably why I did go. It wasn't really to support my sister. It was all very much selfish. And however, at the same time, I would sit there in these AA meetings, and I would listen to this guy. I'll just call him Bill, just for ease. And Bill would talk about his alcohol, and in ways that, like, if I substituted food out for alcohol, it's like my story was more or less his story. And so when this sort of snapped, when my soul snapped in two, I went and Googled Alcoholics Anonymous for food, thinking there might be this part of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that, like, people had problems with food and were also alcoholics, and there was this thing for them. Obviously, it's not, because that's an outside issue. But when I did search that, I found what's called the 15 questions. So if anybody's a newcomer right now, the 15 questions are beautiful. They're basically a self-checklist of, do you have this behavior? And do you have this behavior? And do you have this behavior? And I went through them, and I scored 13 out of 15. The two that I didn't are more related to those who undereat than overeat. But all of the overeat or emotion ones, I scored 100% on those. And so at the bottom of that, it says, if you have answered yes to more than a couple of these, you either are or well on your way to having a problem with compulsive eating. It's like, you don't really need to tell me that. So then I came to my meeting. My first week in program, I found this very meeting, and this has been my home group ever since. And when Cara introduced me, she said that I would talk about how OA has saved my life. And I can say that without any shadow of a doubt, that if I hadn't found OA, if I hadn't found strong recovery through this meeting and other meetings, if I hadn't found a really strong sponsor who ran me through the steps, didn't hold back, was like, let's just get it done. And it was like, no. And so now I want to go into that phase of my life of working through the steps and what the steps mean for me. So I think because of my journey in AA, although there's no journey, but I think you know what I mean. Because of my journey in AA, I was already at that point, like, yeah, I'm willing to admit that I'm powerless. And that got me to step 2, came to believe that power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. It's like, but I already believe in God. I'm a devout Christian. I go to church several times a week. I already have a God. And there's something that I had to come to realize, which where agnostics brought me to, and that was that I am a compulsive eater, but also I am an agnostic. As deeply religious as I am an agnostic, or I was rather an agnostic, because I did not believe that the God that I believed in could restore me. I didn't believe that God had that power. Like, if you'd asked me how powerful is God, I would say he can do absolutely anything. But if you said, well, can God help you with your food? My answer back then would have been a resounding no, because I've prayed about it, I've asked about it before, I've went to my priest before, I've done this, I've done that, nothing ever worked. And that's because I was not willing to admit that in this one phase of my life, I was an agnostic. And as soon as I could say, yeah, and at that point, I think there's this phrase in the big book that says, we only need the desire to believe this. And I think that's where I was at the beginning. It's like, I believe that in principle God can, but like he hasn't up until now. So where does that make sense in my head? It just didn't. So I was just, I'm willing to walk this path. And so then I got to step 3, and I said the step 3 prayer. And I remember talking to my sponsor just after that, and it was like there was just this shade. I can't remember what terminology I used at the time, but it's like this shade. It was just, something was just lifted after I said the 3rd step prayer. And now I can say with 100% certainty, yeah, my higher power can and has relieved me from the bondage to food. Food is no longer my master. Food is no longer my God. But then I got to scary step, or what I thought was scary step. It's not. And that's step 4. So writing down everything that has gone a bit wrong in my life, because I'm a compulsive eater. And having not only to write that down, but also to get to the point where I was able to share it with someone.
That's 15 minutes, Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, share it with my sponsor. And I had to talk about things like kicking my sister in the coccyx, so much so that she ended up in a wheelchair, needing access to a wheelchair from time to time over the next 4 years. I was a horrible, angry, vicious, vile human being. And it wasn't me, it was the food that was controlling me. But that's what the food did to me. And so I had to look at my past and say, yeah, this happened. And look at where I'd been either verbally or physically abusive in my past, as well as many other things. And so that drew me to step 5, the actual sharing of it. And I remember there's something on my step 4 list that happened to me, and I remember that one, my sister thing, and also the thing that happened to me in my childhood, having to go, well, not having to, but going to my sponsors. Like, I know if you once I've probably told you these things, you probably won't want to do anything else with me. And yeah, I remember then sharing those 2 things, and it's like, I can't remember what was said, but it was something like, is that it? It's like, what you're worried about? It's like, I've heard much more than this. And it was just beautiful for her to say, yeah, it's fine. It is what it is. Not a problem. Let's move on. Now we'll hear the rest of it. So then I was able to share my resentments and my fears. And I found in that moment, but also in programs since, that it's not really the resentments that control me. It's the fears that bring me into the food that control me. It's always fears, and have sort of three main core fears that, like everything else, every resentment, every fear that's on my list and has been on my list since, is always related to these three things. And this is fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, and fear of loneliness. And I share those things because maybe that's you too, or also in my experience, sharing my fears enables me to be free from them, like the big book promises us. There's an expression in this country, and probably in America too, that says a problem shared is a problem halved. And it's true that as soon as I'm willing to say to someone, I have a fear that I'll never be accepted as a trans woman, or I have a fear that I'm going to fail university, or I have a fear that my the career that I feel drawn to might not come to pass. It's like, as soon as I share those fears, it's like, it's not a problem anymore. I'm not saying it's not in my head, but it doesn't control me, and it doesn't make me think, well, yeah, you're probably going to fail university, so let's go and buy a Chinese. Yeah, this is going to happen, so let's go and buy some other fast food, because that's going to help. And it's that thought process to get me out of it. And so then I went through steps 7 and 8 very quickly. Step 6 and 7 very quickly, and then step 8, being willing to make amends to the people who I'd hurt in the past. That was frightening. Like, there was a couple of people who I was really dreading, and one of them was my ex-wife. There'd been some very bad things happen that I'm not proud of. But like I said, with my sister, those are things that weren't me. They were the food that was controlling me. I'm a different, like another fellow in this program says, I'm a different person now than the person who did those things. And so because I'd had this thing and I had to do fear, and I remember sitting on the stairs because my wife and son had come up to my mother's for the day, sitting on the stairs talking to another good friend of mine, because my sponsor was probably still in bed because of time difference. But saying to her, like, I can't do this. It's like everything's just going to go wrong. And she says, not a problem. Let's just pray. Tell me what you're going to say to Maria. That's my ex-wife. And then let's pray at the end. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to jump up off the stairs and basically just tell Maria everything that you've just told me. And we'd been very, very distant for quite some time. And I made my amends, and my ex-wife was like, oh, don't worry about it. I forgot about that years ago. And then just embraced me and gave me a big hug. And it was in that moment that, like, I knew that I might have problems with other step 9s, but my higher power always had my back, and my fellows would always be there to help me along if I needed it. And I have relied on this fellowship a lot in doing those things. So then I get into steps 10, 11, and 12. Steps 10 and 12 are the easy ones for me. Step 11, not so much. So step 10, whenever I have a resentment or a fear, just like I did with my step 4, write it down, get it out of me, share it with someone else. And then I'm free from all of that bondage. Again, like the theme of this talk is, it's like food is no longer my master as long as I relieve myself from those things, from the fears and resentments that want to control me. But then step 11, doing my nightly review and also meditation. I really find this difficult. Not so much the nightly review, that's easy, but meditation and being still and being alone with myself. It's something I can do, but I really don't like the silence. Really, really hard for me. And I think it's really important that I say what's hard for me, because other people will probably struggle with one or more of the steps. And I think hearing that there's an answer that other people also struggle, I think is really good. And it's something that when I've heard it in meetings has always benefited me. And then step 12, and it's the rest of this share that I want to devote this step to. It's so very, very easy for me to get wrapped up in myself. Charlotte needs this, Charlotte wants that, Charlotte must do this. I mean, being at university results in a ton of step 10 work. Being a trans woman with a very conservative parent and siblings, it gets me into step 10 a lot. So quite often I just need to get out my own head. And this is why step 12 is important for me. So step 12 is about carrying the message. And carrying the message can mean anything from not eating certain foods. And if somebody asks me, just say, because that food makes me ill. And then if they say how, then going into that. But it can also be about me opening the door for an old woman in the street. It's like, how's that step 12 work? And the person who told me this, and I love her to bits for it, it's like, would you have done that prior to this program? It's like, no, because I was a selfish, horrible, evil person. Says, but you would do it now, right? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, that proves that the program is in work in your life. So practically everything that you do in your life is carrying the message. The person may not know why you're doing it, but it's still carrying the message. And so when I always look for at least one opportunity a day to carry the message to somebody outside the program or to another compulsive eater. So yeah, I really view step 12 as important, but it's also the things inside the program that are beneficial. So one of my biggest joys, and I hope that everyone here either has or someday might have this opportunity, is seeing another person go from compulsively eating and not being able to stop to having some converse. It's nothing that I've done. It's my higher power and their higher power working together. But seeing that person go from being a compulsive eater, not being able to get out of the food at all, to saying, I started with my first sponsee yesterday. And they can only do that because they, like me, have been able to work all 12 steps and living in 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. I can't tell you how joyous that feeling is when somebody knows enough to be able to say, not a problem, it's now my higher power and mine's turn to go and support somebody else on this journey. And being able to talk with someone and share with someone and help them along that path, like I said, gets me out of myself. But I also love the business side of Aware. And if you've tried the business side of Aware and it's not for you, that's fine, but just give it a chance. So I am quite often, it's like I have my meeting, but then I forget about everything else. So we have an intergroup, we have a region, we have the World Service Office. And it's like these things need service volunteers. They need people to take on those service roles. And I've had some amazing privileges in doing that. So I just want to share just a little bit of one of those service roles that I absolutely loved best. And that is, I was on the committee that ran workshops in the virtual region. So if anybody doesn't know, there's a workshop every month in the virtual region, second Sunday of the month, on a whole load of topics, from step 1 stuff all the way through to How do I maintain recovery through 10, 11, and 12, and literally everything in between. If you don't know about the workshops, please go and take a look. But it was in that moment, while working with that committee, that I was, in many ways, I've grown up in this program. So I started on that committee about a month into program, and I stopped working with that committee a couple of months. I don't know how long it is now, but a couple of months ago. It's like I learned how to, probably not perfectly, but I learned how to be patient. I learned how to be able to sit there and listen and hear a point of view that's different to mine. And this is one of the most beautiful things. I also found out when to stop. So I decided to step down from that service role. Wasn't my end of my term. I decided that it was no longer being healthy for me. I was starting to be as compulsive about that service role as I was about the food. And so there's this beautiful little PDF on OA.org, and it's called 12 Step in the Problem. And basically it's like, if you've got a problem, basically work through it. So it's like, I'm powerless over the workshop committee. And then you work through those steps until, and very much in the same way as I work through my step 4, step 5, step 8, and step 9, but on this one thing rather than within the food.
There's 2 minutes.
And the answer came.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, the answer became abundantly clear that I needed to step down from that service role. Like I said at the beginning, OA has saved my life. I am not only alive, I am not only going to have much more longevity to my life, hopefully, than being dead within the next 10 years. But I've also been released from all of the anger, the frustration, the Charlotte's always got to be right. Those things don't save my life, as in they keep me alive, but they allow me to live. The freedom that comes in being able to say, that person's wrong, but I don't need to correct them. I don't need to make my point heard right now, because it's not, quite frankly, it's none of my business. And just being able to stand there and not have to argue. It's one of the most beautiful, liberating experiences. And the promises, the step 9 promises that we'll hear at the end of the meeting, when those come true, that's where real life begins. The recoiling from a hot flame, the being able to be at peace and ease with oneself. But I struggle with that in my step 11, but I am able to just be at peace and ease and not have to be right. The ability to not have to worry about what's going to happen next, what job I'm going to do at the university, just all of the freedom that comes through working this program, working this 12 steps, and having that freedom is one of the most, like I said, beautiful, liberating, freeing, life-giving and life-sustaining opportunities that anyone can have. And if you're a newcomer right now and it's like, I don't know whether I can do this, please, please, please just walk the path. It wasn't difficult for me, and it's not going to be difficult for you either. I love this program. I hope that my higher power enables me to be here for the rest of my life, so that I can remain a recovered compulsive eater. But that is who I am today. Thank you for letting me celebrate my 2 years in program with you. And thank you for letting me just share a little bit of my own experience, strength, and hope. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Yay, I'm clapping for everybody. Woo. We will now open the Q&A section of our meeting, which will also be recorded. Please only post your questions in the chat function. Our host Jax will ask them on your behalf. Due to GDPR. We need to, I know it's a British thing, so I have to remember it. We have to have everybody sign off. So please only post your questions to Jax or in the chat, and she will ask them on your behalf. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to put in the chat box now? Anyone? You can, again, you can post them directly in the chat to Jax, or you can put them up there. Yes, wonderful. We are in the chat. We do have some thank yous and some wonderful shares, Charlotte. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay. Hi, Charlotte. Hi, everybody. Jack's Compulsive Overeating Restrictor. Charlotte, thank you so much. That really was unbelievable and just so well structured as well. I've taken lots of notes and I'll be getting in touch with you. So we have a question here from Alan, and Alan says, how do you find balance with life and OA service?
So it's a really good question. Thank you. So I do a lot of service. For some people, they think that I do too much, and that's fine. But for me, if I'm doing something in a way, I ask myself 3 questions. And if I can answer these 3 questions in the affirmative, then I take on that service role. It's, am I fully aware of the time commitment that this will involve? And can I meet that time commitment? Will some of that time commitment that I have take me away from university, family, church, whatever is important to me, and obviously eventually work? And then thirdly, why? Why am I taking on this service position? Is it because it's like, this will make Charlotte look good? Or is it, I'd absolutely love to do this to be able to support my fellows in program, and it's nothing to do with me? So if I answer those 3 questions and I'm comfortable with those answers, then I'll take on that service role. But at the same time, like I said, with the workshop committee thing, I also take stock of what service I'm doing. And it's like, if that's becoming unhealthy for me, if that balance is off, then I will step down from that service position. So I've done it once and I'm just about to do it again in a couple of weeks. So it's just about being consciously aware, and just like I do a step 10 on, or a step 11, I guess, but as I do a step 10, when things get challenging, I do exactly the same thing with my service. It's like, those 3 questions that I asked, can I still answer them? And if I can't, then I will make a different decision. So yeah, hope that helps.
Thanks very much, Charlotte. Great answer and a great question. Next is from Brona D. And she said, thank you, Charlotte. It was a really great share. And she says, how do you continue to enlarge and develop your spiritual life?
So it's all about willingness, I think. So like I said, with for instance, with the step 11 thing, which is definitely about enlarging my spiritual life. I don't like it. I really don't. Like, I'm going to be brutally honest. I hate doing it. But unless I'm willing to take that step, just like I had to be willing to try a different meal plan. I had to be, and eventually those things worked and they clicked and moved on. And with regards to my spiritual life, it's the same. It's like, if I'm in a meeting and somebody says, well, I actually start my day by reading 40 Day in Voices of Recovery, I'm like, I really don't think getting up early just to read 2 pieces of literature is going to work for me. But it did. I absolutely love doing it. It absolutely grounds me. And I have both on my Kindle tablet right now for that very reason. And it's just about listen and be consciously aware. And if I feel that my higher power is speaking to me in somebody else's share to do something, then just do it regardless of whether I want to, and just do it. Because I know my higher power will always show me that he led me to this for some reason, even if I can't understand that reason at the time.
Thank you, Charlotte. And we now have a question from one of our fellows who says that they found out today that this person's sponsor has relapsed. And our fellow is saying that actually the sponsor is still willing and wanting to continue to sponsor our fellow. However, this particular fellow feels that this may not be the best thing for this person's recovery if the sponsor is not recovered. And just wonders, do you have any experience, strength and hope with this issue?
So I have been lucky in, to my knowledge, none of my sponsees and none of my sponsors have relapsed, and also I've never relapsed in sponsorship. Well, in program. And so the answer is I don't have specific experience, strength and hope, but my opinion, so probably not what I should be sharing, but my opinion is this, that for somebody to guide you through the 12 steps, they have to have a message to carry. And if they've just relapsed, do they have that message right now? And for me, if that was me, it was the answer would be no, and I would not feel comfortable about that. But I think that's a question that the fellow needs to ask themselves. If you think, and if your higher power is saying that that's not in the best interest, then follow your higher power. There's a fellow who I only worked in sponsorship with her for 5 minutes, a couple of calls, but something that she says and is wonderful, and I remember it. It's just ask your higher power. Literally, just ask. So the other day, I had an opportunity to get something to eat, and I just held both things in my hand and said, "Which one shall I have?" And the clear message was that the one on my right hand was the one I was supposed to have. But everything inside of me told me that probably should have been this one. Like if I'd made the decision on my own, it would have been the other option. And so just listening for that intuitive thought in anything that you do. Like I said, I only worked with this person briefly, but it's something that I've carried with me since, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I've never done it before, so thank you to them. But also, that would be my thing. If you're having a difficult decision, just ask your higher power what to do.
Yeah, thanks. Great answer. Reminds me of somebody saying, "Whatever the question, higher power is the answer." So yeah. Thank you. Now we have a message from Rebecca, and she says, Charlotte, could you tell us how you keep up your connection to your higher power throughout the day? Great question. Thank you.
It is, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, and this is something that I struggle with and don't do very well. I have things that I try to do, but I don't do very well. So at least 3 times a day when I eat, I will, before I say the blessing on my food, I will just pray to my higher power saying, is there anything I need to know in this moment? And just listen, that intuitive thought, just listen for it. And my higher power is sometimes like, no, not right now, everything's good. And then other times it's like, actually, yeah, there's this thing that you need to do or not need to do, or actually, I don't think having your food right now is actually a good idea. Let's go and do the work that you should be doing, and then we can eat a little bit later on. And so I do that at least 3 times a day. So it's on a morning, on an evening, and then in the middle of the day. And then I I plan to pray in between times. Quite often, so I'm not a driver. I walk everywhere on foot. So like when I'm walking to university or away from university or between lectures, I'll just pray to. So I view my higher power like my best friend. Just like if I had a friend next to me, it would just be like chatting as we walk along, and that's what I do. Sort of to maintain that connection. It's maybe life's hard, or it was maybe I'll literally just tell my higher powers like that lecture was absolutely awful. I think the lecture is terrible, and my higher power will sometimes answer that and say, "Could you do any better?" And sometimes like there's just silence, but I always just try. Whenever there's that moment of silence when I wouldn't necessarily be talking or acting, I try and connect with my higher power. But as I said, I don't do it very well.
Yeah, sorry, that's a really great answer. Thank you. We have a message from Kathleen, and she says, Charlotte, thank you very much. And then a question from Nancy, who says, Charlotte, your serenity is so apparent. Can you tell us how that has changed in your time in the program?
Yeah, so just like my higher power has changed since I came into this program. I had something when I came in and something completely different now. My abstinence is predominantly the same, but also very different, which is like a contradiction in terms, but also my recovery, and also the serenity that comes with that recovery. I don't account for it. I don't take it for granted, but it does grow and does develop over time, and it's whenever I'm most connected with my higher power that's the strongest. And so that's the first sign, is when I'm struggling with having that, it's what's amiss and what do I need to do. But again, like with so many things, it's just about listening to that voice in my head. Yeah, I have voices in my head. It's just about listening to that voice in my head saying, if I can feel a peace in my head rather than having so many things whirling around in my head, then I know it's there. And if not, then I know that I need to go and do some step 10 work, or do something that I should have been doing. And it's just about taking those corrective actions. But yes, it does grow, it does develop, and does get more intense over the 2 years. And I should imagine that will change and develop even more. So my next 4-year anniversary, hopefully, will be different again. But I can't quite articulate it. It's something that is.
That's great, thank you. And then have a message from Eleanor, and she says, what practical things did you do in the earlier days when you wanted to throw in the towel and head back to the food, if indeed you have days like this? How do you hold on to progress whilst not becoming downbeat once you started to recognize the extent of your character defects and the traits which the steps will hopefully relieve us of with time?
So there's a lot in there. Can you just read that again for me?
Again, I think it's a great one. Thank you, Eleanor. I think there are probably a couple of questions in there. What practical things did you do in the earlier days when you wanted to throw in the towel and head back to the food? If indeed you have days like this. So I think that's the first question. So I'll get you maybe to think about that.
So firstly, absolutely, yes, I have days like that. I think most compulsive overeaters have days like that. And so in the early days, before I knew what a step 10 was, what I would do is I would call or text or WhatsApp my sponsor saying, I can't do this anymore. This thing's gone wrong. I don't know how to deal with it. Or I'd reach out to a fellow. So that would be the first thing. And I used to rely on my sponsor a lot more than my higher power, which I've only really started to recognize very recently. So that's the first thing I would do, is reach out to my higher power. But that's an answer that I have now. It wasn't an answer then. Reach out to my fellows, but also to use the 9 tools. So things like writing, things like telephone call, things like reading literature. So there's the stories in the back of the big book. No matter what your problem is, this is what I do. No matter what my problem is, just spin the pages open, and wherever it lands and wherever my eyes land, read that paragraph. I don't care what the problem is. The answer is always there. I've never had to go and look for a second paragraph. It's absolutely bonkers. It's like failsafe. It's like my higher power is like saying, yeah, this paragraph here. I think it's because those stories are just so jam-packed with recovery that I can hear what I need to hear regardless of the problem. And so, yeah, mainly reading, speaking to someone, and then being in contact with my sponsor. And then once I knew about it, doing a step 10, because it's the step 10 that keeps me grounded now. But obviously that's not an early days thing. That comes later on.
Thanks, Charlotte. I'm going to give you the second part of that question, and then we have one more question from a newcomer, so that'd be great to get to that. I'm just looking at the time, and we're kind of going down to when I hand back over to Cara, 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask you the second part of the question, and then there's one more after that. So how do you hold on to progress whilst not becoming downbeat once you started to recognize the extent of your character defects and the traits which hopefully the steps will relieve us of with time?
So how do I keep track of that? Well, first, so something that my sponsor got me to do way back when is write down 3 gratitudes from the day. But also listen to a meeting. So there's a 5 days a week plus a special edition meeting that I go to, which has really strong recovery. And what I do is I look back at the things I've wrote, so the gratitudes or the reflections from the meeting. And it's like, I don't quite feel like that right now, but I know I felt like that before, so I know I feel like that again. So just continue doing the basic things. And that's something that I struggle. I let go of the basic things a little bit, and then I need to bring them back in. So the basic things are steps 1, 2, and 3. Admission, reflection, and then turning over. So it's I am, he can, and he is, for me. And yeah, the steps absolutely do. Just work them like your backside's on fire.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go on to last message from our newcomer, Tal. And she says, can we say, first of all, thank you so much for your honesty and your share. Said she's still a little bit in the dark as to what abstinent means to her. What does it mean to you?
Thank you. Yeah. So everybody's abstinence in OA is different. So the OA has a definition, and that definition is abstinence is the act of refraining from compulsive eating and compulsive food behaviors. So it's like, what does compulsive eating mean to me? Well, compulsive eating means to me, firstly, not eating anything that's on my red light list. So I have a list of foods that are red lights, and just like the red stands for danger, I don't go anywhere near those. But then at the same time, I have behaviors as well. So it's like when I'm cooking, if I've cut up like 2 carrots, for instance, just having one of those pieces of carrot and munching on it while I'm cooking would be not abstinent for me. My abstinence is 3 meals a day, perfectly balanced. So I had a meal plan done by a professional, and then sitting down while I'm eating. So it doesn't matter whether I'm at a barbecue with friends, whether I'm in the house on my own, whether I'm in a restaurant. My abstinence is meat, protein, vegetables 3 times a day and sitting down while consuming that. And there's also the important thing for me is staying consciously aware of what my body is doing. So there are some foods that I could eat at the beginning. So things like figs, dates, and apricots. I remember having a meltdown with my sponsor when first time I recognized this. There was a problem for me. And it's like, I can't have them now, so I'm going to put them on my red light list. And so basically it's just about remaining consciously aware and being honest with myself. And so if my abstinence does change, that I change my meal plan in line with that. And the other thing is, ask that to your sponsor as well, because your sponsor should guide you to what, like red light list and other things that will help you guide you to what abstinence is for you. Yeah, I'm not sure whether that helps, but
it's great. Thank you, Charlotte. I'm going to hand over back to Cara now, but I just want to say thank you so much. That really was unbelievably helpful. And I'm sure on behalf of everybody, I can say thank you very, very much.